Hi, everybody, and welcome to our special Coaches Corner edition of the Dr. Z and J-Dub podcast. J.W. Stewart along with our UNH AD, Dr. Z, Shay, and Zenger. And Dr. Z, our guest coming up in just a couple of moments is Kelsi Lykens, who's our field hockey coach at UNH. What can you tell us about Kelsi?
You know, there are two things that come to mind. One, she is our first ever field hockey coach at UNH. And two, she's at the beginning of her career. And with that comes a lot of enthusiasm and strong work ethic and attention to detail. And really count on her to always bring that level of enthusiasm and attention to detail. And she certainly does.
We couldn't have picked a better person to coach and lead our inaugural program. Kelsi is one of the best field hockey players in recent memory. She was a two-time All-American and the two-time national champion at the D2 level at D2 Powerhouse Westchester in Pennsylvania. She was hired in January of 2017, and the inaugural season started later that year. So we're glad Kelsi is with us here at the University of New Haven, and we're glad Kelsi is with us today here on the special Coaches Corner edition of the Dr. Z and J-Dub podcast. We'll bring Kelsi out from the green room. And Kelsi, I'll have you unmute yourself here so you can actually join the conversation. Kelsi, welcome aboard. It's great to see you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Great way to start off the day. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I gave you your accolades there. That's a pretty impressive resume. How did you end up from two-time All-American, two-time national champion to starting a program here at UNH?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It was definitely a transition for me, going from a place getting used to winning and then coming to a place where that might not be possible right off the bat, but seeing so much promise in a place like the University of New Haven, knowing that that is definitely in the near future for us. And just seeing the amount of strides that we've taken over the course of going on 4 years now, I definitely see it in our foreseeable future.
You know, J-Dub, I've been a part of I was part of the startup football program at South Florida. We've talked about that. So I've gone through some of what Kelsi's going through. And one of the things I think she does best is whether it's practice, strength and conditioning workouts, or games, you wouldn't guess she doesn't treat it like it's a startup at the beginning. She has high expectations, and I think that will just transition from one class to the next as she builds this program.
Kelsi, how actually do you build a program? I mean, you came in, I said, hired in January 2017. You did have some assistant coaching experience, but how in the world do you start from scratch and get to where you are now?
Yeah, the first year in 2017 was probably the most challenging. Just seeing that we started in January and then I had to put a team on the field by August. So just being such a short time frame, there wasn't a lot of off-campus recruiting. So I had to draw a lot of student athletes from the university, current student athletes. So a lot of those players in 2017 actually came from either the club field hockey program, who never really had a recruiting process and wanted to go through and play Division II athletics. However, I drew some kids from there. I was able to recruit a couple freshmen who were very late in their recruiting process, or students who just wanted to come to New Haven, who maybe played field hockey in high school. So I'm not going to lie, I say it all the time, the team was kind of thrown together that first year. But what we decided to focus on instead of winning field hockey games was building the culture. And that's one thing that we have stayed true to through and through every single year. I always tell our kids our culture is dynamic and it's consistently changing. From one team to the next, especially during a growing program, it's never going to be the same. We're always looking to improve it, but it's up to them to build it. I never wanted to come in as a new head coach and enforce all of the things that I took from my winning program and bring it here. It wasn't going to work if I did it that way. You know, so just finding out what works at New Haven and what works with that specific team that year and make them feel important because they were about building the future of this program. And I always had that long-term vision in mind for us. And I always talked about that. Like, hey, in 3 to 4 years from now, this is where we want to be. So this is what we have to do now.
You know, we don't often single out individual players on any of these shows, but in this situation, to underscore the expectations that Kelsi's talking about and leadership, our current president of the Student Athlete Advisory Council, we call it SAC, is one of her players. And that speaks volumes for her program and especially such a young program.
Yeah, definitely. Natalie has been a through and through leader on our team. And it's funny that you say that because she's a senior this year. So she is one of the first people to have 4 full years of this program. And I'm so happy to have Natalie. She is tenacious in the goal, but she knows how to have like real in-depth conversations about serious issues, but then also get all of the student athletes on board in SAC. And I know that's been a learning curve for her, but she takes every punch and rolls with it.
I know that it's been a learning curve, like you said, for Natalie and for you these first few years. You guys did not win a game that first year in 2017. Kelsi, what was it like when you finally won that first game in October of 2018?
It was great. I'm not going to lie, though. It was we didn't play the best. That was October 2nd in 2018. So, and that's where it kind of goes back to the culture of what you were saying, how they knew what we were happy for winning. But the talk at the end that we had in terms of our celebration, it wasn't all rainbows, you know? Like we had that quick celebration, but then we're like, did we earn this win? Did we actually play well? And so it, like I said, it was exciting, but I think the kids wish it would have been, we would have played differently in order to earn that a little bit more. But that's what I mean. And I think that goes back to what Dr. Z was saying, how I really do hold them to a high standard. And even though we did win that game, I think they knew that they didn't necessarily deserve it that day.
What a lesson for them, Coach, in that even your best wins as a coach, there's always things that can be corrected. And that's what fans don't always understand. We don't just go celebrate like everybody else. Unless it's a championship, you tend to not watch the film or the tape, so to speak. But other than that, you're going to grind through that tape, and there's always things you can correct and always get a little bit better. I know for young players, that's a hard lesson to learn, that it's just not all, as you said, puppy dogs and rainbows.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely a hard lesson for them to learn. And they were up here, and then after that talk, they may have been a little bit more down here, but then that just gives us that drive the next day to practice. You know, they understand that they didn't hit that standard, so they came out 100%, and that's how we have to continue to move forward.
Kelsi, how much of what you implement into your program comes from your parents? And share with us, you come from a family of field hockey coaches, and I think that's as important as anything to share with the folks watching right now.
Yeah, that's an important one. I took so much from both of my parents. And for those of you who don't know, for the viewers watching, my parents are obviously married, and they coached me all throughout. So when I was youth field hockey starting in 3rd grade, they started the whole field hockey program in our district. So at our school, they started the program. So I had that vision of starting something from brand new at a very young age. So I've always had big dreams, and I've always wanted to initiate and start something that's very appealing and exciting to me. But they more or less wanted to provide opportunity. And that's one of the things I'm very adamant about. I want people to play field hockey. And so seeing that at a young age, again, it just helped me and drove me, because I thought I'm providing opportunity at the Division II level for people to continue their athletic career using field hockey. So when I think about starting a program, I think about them first and foremost. But I think the things that the actual characteristics I've taken away, especially from my parents, have really been just grit, like get after it every single day, just grind 100%, and find ways to motivate yourself, not only on the field, off the field, how you always say, in the classroom, in your personal life. It's always a competition. And that's how it's been with my parents all the time. It's just like you find ways to motivate yourself, even if you have to lie to yourself for a second.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kelsi, because obviously this season we need more motivation than ever, right? There's no games right now. You guys normally would be playing. How have you found that motivation? What have you guys been doing in the absence of actual games?
Yeah, so when we first heard the news, I would say people were a little upset, but I think the way I approached it with our team was about opportunity. And obviously internally as a coach, I tell them, hey guys, I'm upset too. This isn't just something where you're devastated. I'm very upset, and you have every right to be upset about this right now. But we need to think about it a couple days after letting ourselves be depressed and upset, is just to move forward and see it as an opportunity for our team to grow. Being a fall sport, we never really had that time to get our freshmen acclimated and get their feet under them when they're trying to balance so many things. And I said, we have the opportunity to do that now. And we have 10 incoming freshmen this year. So we really needed to take the time to bond. And again, we're focusing back on culture, bringing it back to basics. But the ways that we're staying motivated right now is we're trying to find ways to compete with ourselves at practice. So it's not, even though we can't have that contact and that back and forth, how faster can you run the next sprint? How quickly can you recover? How fast are you taking your release on your shot? It's everything. So our practices are very fast paced, and it almost simulates a game-like environment. So they're constantly competing with themselves.
So, Kelsi, I didn't get to see one of your practices this week, modified practices, but I did get to see part of your team in the weight room. And, one of the things I'd like you to share with JW and the viewers is, and one of my favorite parts of what you do is, I call it your classroom. You invited me into one of your team meetings over in the student center, and really enjoyed the approach and was impressed with the approach you had to the whole person. And it wasn't just about field hockey. It was about the classroom, and it was about their personal lives and being leaders. And, when I've been around you, it shows up in different aspects.
Yeah, definitely. We have a reputation in the weight room for sure of just like we jog from place to place, and I make our upperclassmen tell the freshmen what our reputation is. And I think that's so important, and that's the transition period we're in as our program. Instead of me trying to instill it, we finally have that upperclassman leadership where they say, hey, this is our reputation. They're holding their teammates accountable. So we are constantly building, but like you said, it is about the whole approach and the whole person. And we talk so much about mental health with our team specifically, having open dialogue about difficult conversations, whether that is in terms of mental health, whether it is in terms of social injustice, or, just building our team culture and leadership ability. We have those conversations all the time, and how to talk to people. We talk about conversation. We talk about communication and how to approach things. So I think that's helped our team definitely.
Good.
Kelsi, because the field hockey program is so young, what is the relationship like between you, the current players, and the players who have just graduated?
That's a great question. I think that people who recently graduated are going to look back at some of our games and be like, wow, didn't know that was possible. I actually had 3 of our alumni who were a part of the very first field hockey team. They came and commented a game in 2018. So I had them sit up in the press box, and they were commenting on a game that was happening just a year after. And afterwards, I gave them all a nice sweatshirt that they could wear in the press box to keep them warm. So that they liked that part. But commentating on the game, they just said like, wow, in a year, just the amount of strides that you were able to take. The team looks phenomenal. And then one of the girls, Kathy Sinquay, even said to me, Coach, I remember you tried to get me to do that type of pass for just so many times, and they're already out there doing it. So I think they're looking back on this being proud, very proud, but just really seeing the amount of strides and progress we've taken up until this point. And then I would say our current alum, and we only had one senior graduate last year, Ashley Higgins, I think she's also going to look back in a year and do the exact same thing. Just because we are every single year growing so much, we don't have those long-standing traditions like a lot of other teams have, or a long-standing reputation. So I think, again, we're just in the process of building it. So every alum in these recent years are going to look back and say, I was part of that. And I think it comes with a lot of pride, Charger pride.
Wow. I without her knowing that this was the time frame that we were bumping up against here at the end, J-Dub, that's a pretty good closing statement. I was trying to think of something really intelligent to ask, and I'm not sure what you ask after that.
Yeah, I think Kelsi brought, got us right to where we needed to be, right? This is the message to our alums here, right? We want them to be involved, right? Kelsi, just real quick to wrap it up, your message to the alums in terms of their continuing support to the program would be what?
Just without your support, and support can come in so many different forms. That means watching games in person online. That means donating. We actually had a former alum donate to our program so we could go do apple picking, and that brings our team closer together. So it could be something as big or small, and it helps our program so much. And I'm so thankful to have those alumni, and every single cent that they give to the university will help our program continue to grow as much as it has in the last 4 years.
Field hockey coach Kelsi Lykens. Kelsi, thanks for being with us. Dr. Z loves food. I'm sure he's going to be asking for an apple pie if you guys went apple picking.
You better do something with that apple for it to, sound better to me. I like apples, but apple pie is way better.
All right. I'll get the kids on it.
Okay.
Kelsi Lykens, our field hockey coach here at the University of New Haven. Kelsi, thanks for being with us in our special Coach's Corner edition of the Dr. Z and J Dub podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Dr. Z, you were right. She's a great person. Her smile's infectious. Her attitude is infectious. It's no wonder the players love playing for, and it's no wonder she's got a good recruiting, right? When she first started out in 2017, she was grabbing whoever she could. Nowadays, the recruiting's a little bit better, and you can see why people want to come play for her.
It's obvious she comes from a background of coaching. Her competitive nature comes through. Her attention to detail. I'm really enthused about watching her grow as a coach over the years, and I think the sky's the limit for her as she goes forward in her career.
Sky's the limit for her. Sky's the limit for our UNH field hockey program. All right, that'll wrap up another edition of this special edition of the Coach's Corner, the Dr. Z and J Dub podcast.
Dad, first of all, thank you very much for your generous donation of $100,000. The other part of you joining us here on Charge On is your challenge to everyone who's watching. Please tell us about the challenge that you're laying down for everybody else.
Join me with your belief in women's athletics and how you benefited from women's sports and how we can pay it forward to the next generations. I'm getting chills thinking about it. Join me.